We're on 4 minutes past, so I'm going to get started and we're going to let people in as we go along. But effectively, welcome everyone. I'm going to give you a sense of what we're going to try and achieve today, and my faithful co-host Aaron is going to help me by admitting people in as we go through this.
Just on that note, I'm just going to stick myself on mute for a second because there's a few people having trouble with the link, so I'll have to do some typing.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Hey everyone. What we're going to do today is we're going to give you a sense of what Firestarters is and why we have it at all, and why we've decided to put all this effort and energy into it and have all of you lovely people in the room. And then we're going to talk a bit about why we're here today specifically, what the specific thing is that we're looking at. Then we're going to talk to the incredible Yor, and we're going to have a bit of a Q&A with him. And if anyone would like to ask a question, please do. I feel like this is going to be quite a vocal group. I hope everyone has interesting questions for Yao. It's going to be great. And then we're going to go into breakout rooms. And in those breakout rooms, you've got an absolutely sparkling lineup of facilitators. And I've got some very gushing biographies to give you of all those facilitators, so you can get to know who you're in the room with. And effectively, when you're in the breakout room, we're going to have a bit of discussion and we're going to give everyone a chance to meet and talk. Obviously, this sector suffers quite a bit when it comes to meeting up in person. So what we're going to try and do is enable that to happen today, and hopefully some offline stuff will come out of us all meeting today. So thank you for all of you giving us your time. So first things first, what is Firestarters? Why are we here? Effectively, Firestarters is a community of change makers that put purpose before profit. The reason that we say that is because us as the facilitators at Matchstick Creative, we're a comms and marketing agency, but we recognise that a lot of our work extends into things like socially driven enterprises, the third sector. We work a lot with the council, we work with people at all different areas, but ultimately the thing that connects those people is there is purpose larger than profit. And never is that truer than of the cultural sector. So that's partly what it's about. Really, it's there to drive good across Liverpool City Region. And the way that we do that is through live events like we're doing right now. This is virtual, but soon we will be meeting in person, fear not. We're going to try and do a live event by the end of this year, hopefully. And we're going to have really actionable next steps, because we effectively want to bring all of our network and people's wider networks with the private, public and third sector, so that we can all be the support that we want to see across the city region. You know, it's got roots in activism, it's got roots in people wanting to feel part of something perhaps they felt excluded from. The reason why myself and Aaron, who is my co-host today, founded Firestarters is because we kept turning up to events and no one looked like us. There wasn't anyone who was an androgynous looking tattooed woman, and at the time I was 28 and running a company. There aren't very many people that look like Aaron. It's not very often we turn up to a networking event and there are young black people there. So we're both getting pretty pissed off about this. So we were like, why do we keep attending these events we're not enjoying? Why don't we put on the event we want to be part of? Which is why you're all here. So thank you for being part of the event. Thank you for feeling like our people. That's a good thing. So what I'm now going to do is hand over to Aaron to do some context setting, and he's going to give you a sense of what we're trying to achieve today, and then we're going to talk about our wonderful facilitators. So Aaron, I will hand over to you, and if you want me to click, just tell me and I will move the slides for you.
Yes, please. Okay, yeah, so basically we're here today. Have we got all our guest speakers in? No, can I just check? We've got both Sarahs, we've got Kev, Claire.
I'll keep an eye on the...
yeah, please.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically we're here today to, as we've kind of touched on already, to explore how we can kind of reduce inequalities as we build back equal for the culture and tourism sector specifically. So this is the first of 3 sector-specific events for Building Back Equal. This is actually the second Building Back Equal event. The first one was more broadly about the whole region and business in general, and we had Emmy, who might be on the call today at some point, Emeka Honori is the project manager for the race equality programme for the Liverpool City Region Combined Authority. He was our keynote for the last one, and he kind of talked us through like what they understood the challenges to be in the region at the time. And basically from that event, we felt that like the kind of desire from the group was there to do more and to really like think about doing more to bring change about in the region. And we felt like obviously it was something that we were really passionate about. So we thought it was worth us extending the Building Back Equal series to do these next 3 events, starting with this. Thank you. So why culture and destination tourism? So again, as we've already kind of touched on, the sector's been transformed during the pandemic. I think both culture and tourism are some of the industries with the most scope to build back difference and to build back difference and to build back better. And I think generally, like, this is something which I kind of gravitate towards because outside of Matchstick, I'm the founder of Culture, which I'm sure a few people on the call already know about. And also through the work I've done with the Race Equality Task Force, Liverpool City Council Race Equality Task Force, and a couple of the boards I'm on as well, I've always kind of made the point that I think when you're dealing with the issue of equality and diversity, that you should focus on spaces which are already progressive and already kind of receptive to change and new ideas. And I think that culture and tourism is definitely one of those spaces as far as relative to other sectors. If we go to the next slide, please. Okay, so these are the 4 challenges which have been identified in the Liverpool City Council's cultural strategy. So we're going to be using these today to kind of guide the discussion, so to guide the Q&A with Yao shortly, but also to guide the breakout rooms later on. So the challenges for the region for culture, as far as the council understanding to be, is inequality, specifically socio-economic, geographical exclusion, unequal access to education and opportunity, and gender imbalances and discrimination. I think somebody might have to mute themselves there. Then they've got lack of diversity in management, employment and representation at management level. There's innovation and talent. So there's lack of innovation and talent development leading to lost productivity and investment. So there's challenges around where is future investment coming from. Next slide, please.
So what I'm now going to do is introduce our incredible facilitators who are going to enable us to have this conversation when we're in our breakout rooms. I've got possibly some of the most impressive bios I've ever been given, and I had the horrible job of trying to reduce them down into a couple of sentences for each person. So this is my attempt of doing that. Facilitators, yeah, if I say something or miss something out, I'm sorry, it's just you've all done too much and it's your own fault. So I will try and capture what it is that you're going to be helping us with. So the first person I would like to introduce and welcome is Andrew Eby, who is the Programme Leader of Fashion at LJMU. And effectively, Andrew's the co-founder of FACE, the Fashion Academics Creating Equality, Programme Leader at LJMU and founding member of Bold Agency, which is a black collective of creative authorities working to balance the fashion industry through creative progress. He's worked in all of the good places, Paris, New York, London, for inspiring fashion houses, all whilst founding his own labels. And he's also taught at Kingston University and London College of Fashion, Ravensbourne and Manchester. Andrew's done all the good shit. So welcome, Andrew. Thank you for being one of our facilitators today. Then we've got Sarah, who is the Head of Culture at LCR Combined Authority. She's the lead officer for culture within the Policy and Strategic Commissioning Directorate for Liverpool City Region. She has the strategic responsibility to manage the implementation of the culture and creative strategy effectively. And Sarah Lovell has worked everywhere that is anywhere to do with culture. So she's worked at the Everman and Playhouse Theatres, Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, Royal Exchange Theatre, National Museums Liverpool, as well as in further and higher education establishments, including LIPA, LJMU and Chester University. She had a former role at Arts Council England, where she's the Programme Director for the Young People's Participatory Theatre Project. So again, absolutely incredible facilitator. Thank you, Sarah. Next up, we have got Kevin, who is Head of UNESCO City of Music for Liverpool City Council. And effectively, he is the curator of the British Music Experience, which is the UK's only national rock and pop museum. A crying shame, I'm sure we can all agree, but thank God we've got it in Liverpool. Kevin began writing influential music paper Enemy at just 18 and went on to write for The Face, ID and Mixmab. Effectively, Kevin has got the career I wanted as a teenager, so welcome Kevin, that's super cool. He's also worked for the University of Liverpool, writing about Liverpool music history, and he's also worked in the public sector, where he's headed up the Pioneering Creative Industry Sector Development Agency, Merseyside, ACME. And of course, we have huge credit to be given to Kev for the Baltic Creative CIC and for establishing Sound City. So seriously, you can see why we're struggling to get everyone's achievements in. Then our final three curators and facilitators today, we have got Emma Smith, who is the Artistic Director and CEO of Liverpool Irish Festival. Emma, welcome. I appreciate this is maybe the second time we've ever spoken and you're massively helping us out, so thank you. Emma is the Artistic Director and CEO of the Liverpool Irish Festival, where she's been since 2016. And she's also done things like directorship for Look 15, for the Liverpool International Photography Festival, multiple posts at places like the Blue Coat, and she's also accumulated in her career Head of Creative at Enterprise, as well as any freelance work as well. She's a Liverpool Fine Art and Theatre graduate, and she's got over 20 years experience in art, culture and events sector in the city. So Emma knows her shit when it comes to this stuff. Thank you so much for being here. And then we've also got my dear friend and wonderful marketing director, Sarah Ogle from Everman and Playhouse Theatres. She is the marketing and comms director, and she's previously worked at Manchester Royal Exchange, Blackpool Grand and Birmingham Rep. And in 2002, she returned, thankfully, to her home city of Liverpool, where she's helped rejuvenate the theatre's audiences and reputation, and including overseeing the rebuilding of the award-winning Everyman, accumulating the winning a Reba Award. And she also helped to launch their groundbreaking youth programme, YEP. And a full circle moment, I was a member of YEP, so here we are, seeing the benefits of these programmes in our city. And then last, but by no means least, we've got Claire. And Claire is the Director of Culture of Liverpool, and she's been there since 2009. And she's responsible for major events for things like Liverpool Film Office, Cruise Liverpool, Tourism, City Halls, Cultural Policy. She's led the Legacy Programme in Liverpool for over 10 years, supporting and funding 35 cultural organisations. She sits on the City Region's Cultural Partnership and the Visitor Economy Board, and is Town Centre Commissioner for the City Region. She's won an absurd amount of awards, just all the awards, which also accumulated in her winning an Eventex for Best Events Team in the UK, and they were ranked 15th in the world. So when I say we've got good people in the room, we really mean it. We've got incredible people in the room. And what I'd now like to do is introduce you to Yao, who is going to be our very generous Q&A that's going to be organised by Aaron. So just give you a bit of background on Yao, then we'll get into the Q&A. Yao is the founder of Nothing But The Music, that have worked with MTV, BBC Radio 1 Academy, Sound City and the Brit School, and they also partnered with the Playmaker group to form a dynamic multi-strand music and entertainment company. He's established himself as a key talent developer, heading up the award-winning LIMF Academy, and continues to scout and consult for major labels as well as developing new talent. And alongside his partner Shawnee B and Ray Poole, Yao founded Bruckout Entertainment and launched a joint venture record label with Universal, Bruckout Records. Then, as if that wasn't enough, in August 2020, Yao began working with the PRS Foundation as a programme consultant to build Power Up, which is a new and pioneering initiative aiming to empower Black music creators and executives as part of the PRS Foundation's actions following the Black Lives Matter movement. So, enough from me. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. I'm now going to hand over to Aaron to do the Q&A, and I'll stop talking for a bit. But thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks for that, Ruth. Thanks for passing it over. Are you going to keep some time for me, by the way?
Yes, I will keep an eye on the time to make sure we don't go off subject. I feel like we will, because Yal's going to be dead interesting. So yeah, if I cut you off, I promise I'm not being rude.
Right, so good.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, we're going to do a Q&A with Yao. I'll kind of get the ball rolling, I think, with like a few questions for the first 5 minutes or so, see how we get on. Just to kind of frame the discussion and to put it into the context, which we're going to be just kind of talking about through the breakout rooms as well. So, Yao, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I know you're super busy guy. You cover like a lot of different stuff. Which is
I'm no busier than everyone else you've got on this call, so don't
that might be true, to be fair. But yeah, like that is kind of like why I wanted you to do this Q&A, because you do cover quite a lot of different ground and different perspectives, I suppose. But do you want to just start by kind of introducing yourself in your own words and talking about like some of the work you've done, particularly around this kind of topic?
Yeah, essentially, I feel like I am a creative consultant in the music and music culture space. I think, obviously I do a broad range of things, obviously ranging from people, what people might know me for within, Liverpool, the City Region is Liverpool International Music Festival, and curating that and working with the team at Culture Liverpool for I think since 2013, and then the LIMF Academy. I used to run an organisation called Airbeats, which is very much involved in developing artists within black music. And through that, we've done quite a lot of work within, I suppose, not just locally, but nationally, around youth engagement and development in music and media. And a lot of our team have gone on to do, great things like what Coach's doing with his studio, and Janice Easthope, who's now producing TV shows around the world and stuff like that. So they all kind of came from our core group who started Airbeats. And I've worked with, loads of artists, from Wiley to Shaggy to Damian Marley to, up and coming artists locally like Eleanor Nelly and Zambolo, and I've been kind of working and helping a lot of artists get deals and manage their way through deals and stuff like that. I've produced a lot of documentaries and radio content for BBC Radio 1 Extra, World Service, 5 Live, Radio 4. A lot of people don't even know that, but I do that quite substantially. And yeah, I've been working with like brands such as Levi's and Nike and stuff like that around program development, and more recently, I've started, as well as some of the other stuff that I'm doing, I've started working with PRS Foundation on what I think is the most progressive tackling of anti-black racism and racial disparity in the UK music industry, and the project's called Power Up. So, yeah, this subject's all very close to home, what we're talking about today, and hopefully I can give my point of view.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about the Power Up initiative. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that and how it came about as well?
Yeah, well, it came essentially on the back of Black Lives Matter and that movement, Blackout Tuesday, and I didn't invent this. It was Ben Winter and Joe Franklin. Joe Franklin's the CEO of PRS Foundation, and they wanted to do something that was, I suppose, beyond what they'd done before in terms of their commitment to diversity and inclusion, but especially around black music professionals and music creators. It was almost like, we know there's a problem, but we need to actually think about this differently. And they had the idea of a program and a movement, and it kind of developed into Power Up. And Joe spoke to me and told me about it, and was intrigued at my perspective on this being that again a national program, and still probably the largest and probably most detailed approach to the challenge within that space. And I came on board in August. I think they developed it in June. I come on board in August, and my role was to kind of do the R&D and develop it, getting it ready for launch. And that's like looking at, okay, what could this look like as a program and a movement? What does it look like? So I had to speak to quite a lot of people within the industry, because it was important that it was informed by black people who were experienced this black racism, and it was important that it was led by black people who were in the industry, or black people who had experience and success navigating it. So one of the people who's actually on this call, Les Spain, is one of the key leaders, the executive steering committee, among others. And the idea was to kind of, okay, let's build this program. What will it look like for the participants? How many participants? Where will we get them? How will we make sure people from all different areas across the country and the nations are represented, different genres? You know, just understanding that experience of black people is not one way. It's not straightforward. It's not all in one genre, as many people believe, and it's not all in one space. And because of that, there's challenges. So, you know, it was getting that detail, and then we developed this program. So there's a Power Up participant program. 40 participants every year will get support, which is not just grant support. It's a lot of the other stuff which, you know, makes the change, like mentoring and capacity building and master classes and networking, you know, the sharing of resources and, you know, quite bespoke things like that. And obviously the network, the idea of these 40 individuals who are all coming from different spaces working together. So that's one element, the participant program. And the second element is the movement side, which is kind of going, well, if the participant program deals with the individual, the movement side will deal with the systems, because we talk about systemic racism. So we can't deal with the individuals without looking at how we change the systems, and whether that's lobbying major labels and talking to major labels about how they do what they do better or what they can do better, but also then looking at how, you know, the funding, you know, black organisations, black-led organisations don't get as much funding as, you know, organisations led by other races. So we need to look at that, because again, you know, that limits sustainability of these organisations that are vital in that process, in that progression. And then I suppose the third element is like power links, is like, how do we make sure we're thinking about intersectionality when we're approaching this? How does this impact the rest of PRS Foundation's work across the grants, you know, and support space? So yeah, it's all that. And yeah, I'm the senior manager, so I look over it all, of course. But yeah, it's a meaty project, but we're great to have, you know, we're lucky to have some great supporters. Like some of our partners are like Google, YouTube Music, Beggars Group, you know, every one of the trade bodies and the Black Music Coalition, among others. So there's 18 partners, and we're about to announce about 6 more, I think, next week. And again, some very high profile ones. But it's great to see the sector realise this is a solution, as well as what they're all doing in their organisations as well. So that was my nutshell. Sorry, it was about 7 minutes.
That was a good nutshell. I was going to ask you about the PRS, the Power Up initiative. I know it's kind of like what happened with George Floyd last year must have been somewhat of a catalyst for it. But what are the kind of the other kind of catalysts involved with you know, the PRS and the sector and the industry making that kind of recognition that now's the time to change?
Yeah, I think George Floyd and, you know, Blackout Tuesday made a lot of organisations realise. I suppose it's like similar to what's happened on the back of the England result the other day. It's like it is a catalyst to certain conversations and hard conversations, and people listening, which is the important thing, and then solidarity. And then once you get to solidarity, it's going past that and going, okay, let's get to action on the back of it. So, you know, PRS Foundation have been doing great work for years, and I probably wouldn't have wanted to get involved if they hadn't been. Like, I remember being on panels and discussion groups with them, you know, 5 or 6 years earlier, and I'd seen that they made major steps. But even the approach of going, we're not just going to support the artists, we understand that the industry professionals need the support, and also, you know, going deep into that, you know, speaking to 100 plus professionals within the industry, a lot of the names that people on this call will know, and hearing about their stories and taking that information and putting it in, that kind of, you know, the nuance in the program and the activity, but also the depth of research and applying that. And I think what you're seeing across the industry there are organisations that have put up the black square and made pledges in diversity and inclusion broadly that have failed, I believe, failed expectation. And there's organisations that have pledged and are working towards, and there's organisations that are 10 toes in and doing the best they can. And I think what we're trying to do with Power Up is almost be an entity that allows it to pull together when it needs to pull together, and at the same time, while we're doing some of the longer term stuff, we're doing things on a day-to-day basis to help the individuals. Because my issue with a lot of the strategy stuff, and it's important, but my issue sometimes is some talent falls between the cracks. So if Aaron, you know, we're doing something in Liverpool now that will help you in 5 years, you've got to then sustain for 5 years before that thing comes into play. And I just think sometimes you've got to work on two levels. You've got to work on the day-to-day, let's help now, and then the long-term stuff. And I think that's what Power Up is trying to do. And that's, I believe, it helps in the industry. So I can't go too much into the movement side, but like, I think when we announce the movement activity, it will probably be clearer of how we're going to work with the sector outside of our program to just make sure that people are being held accountable and people are delivering. And if they're struggling to deliver, how Power Up can actually help them do that.
One thing I want to ask you about your role with Power Up particularly, is I feel like that gives you like quite a good perspective of this conversation at a national level. But obviously I know you're involved in like 1,000,001 projects at regional level and quite local as well. Is there things like, do you feel like there are challenges which are unique to Liverpool and our region that aren't kind of experienced at national level?
If you say national level and you mean London, I'd say, yeah, it's very different. But again, I've got a lot of experience working in, I've done quite a bit of work in Coventry around the culture agenda there, and as an individual and working with artists of Nottingham, Leeds, London, places in Scotland, Dublin, and the challenges there's some nuanced ones. I'm dealing with some challenges in Ireland around like identity, because there's people there that don't believe they're Irish and see themselves as immigrants. And how do you then deal with that when you're trying to move forward in your career and you're seen as Irish? Like, there's some stuff like that where, obviously in Liverpool, we're uniquely blessed to say we're Scouse first. Do you know what I mean? And then any other identity is a hyphen. So I feel like, but we are dealing with stuff here that's very different. Like, our history in this city means that certain things need to be taken a lot more seriously. But our ambition in terms of culture and tourism and the worth of it to the city means that, again, especially within music and I suppose music and arts, we've also got to, we've got to know we can't bite the hand that feeds us sometimes. And I think that's, very unique to Liverpool, because not every city has that same amount of power coming from a certain sector. We have, do you know what I mean? And I think, yeah, so it's changing, there's nuance in different spaces, but then there's a lot of commonalities. And I think, I've worked at a national level for quite a long time. So even producing content for those radio stations I mentioned, like, the show I done for World Service had 70 million listeners. Do you know what I mean? It was like the show I done for Radio 4 was the pick of the day and one of the most listened to shows on sounds. And, understanding content and understand storytelling and understanding messaging at a national level only helps locally, and understanding communities and individuals at a local level will always helps inform how you work at a national level. Do you know what I mean? So the two things, again, like I was saying, there's a lot of commonalities, and it's about, I think, drawing down. Like, I believe the work I'm doing with Power Up has helped me with some of the work I'm doing locally, but without the work I've done locally, I'd never be able to do what I'm doing with Power Up. So
just to say, we've had 15 minutes there, so if you want to open up questions to anyone else, that would be very welcome.
Yeah, I was going to say, if anyone's got any questions, either stick them in the chat, or if you know how to use the reactions feature, you can put your hand up as well. I'll give a couple of seconds for anyone to put it in, but I'll carry on until we do. Okay, so in the on the kind of like contrary to that, is there things that you feel like we're doing right in our region, or is there anything that you feel is like a strategic advantage that's unique to us?
I think there's a lot of things we do right here. I think our ambition and commitment to the creatives and the creative sector, and how we intertwine that into the city's messaging and economics and economic benefit, I think is amazing. I think obviously the way Culture Liverpool do to kind of, I believe, galvanise. So even like LIMF, I feel like LIMF is almost like the dropping of LIMF in 2013 to me felt like it raised the level and raised the conversation about equality and equity and all those things, diversity, but in a way that wasn't overt, but it was a way that felt like everybody heard it loud and clear. So I look at, I can compare music festivals in 2013 to music festivals now within Liverpool, obviously not right this second, but until, recently. And I believe we've led the charge. Before 50-50, signing up 50-50 was a thing, you'd struggle to see, our lineups that weren't around that mark. Or we've always had prominent females in the lineup, and, gender minorities, and, LIMF is far from being a black music festival, but we always have prominent black artists throughout the bill, next to artists that someone would have never put them together before. Do you know what I mean? So I believe what culture has done, and like projects like Rise and stuff like that, have really made, really pushed the agenda, and I think that's quite important. I think it should be, not every city has that, and I think a lot of times when I'm speaking to people from other cities, when they're talking about, getting things off the ground and all that, they still marvel at what we do. So I think we do that well. I think there's great ambition across, culture and tech in the city, and I feel like that's amazing. I feel like the small organisations, small to medium organisations that just do amazing stuff and just get on with it, like what you guys are doing, like just literally crack on and just do stuff and lead that charge. And I was just on the phone earlier with Kitchen Street about some stuff they're doing. I'm just like, wow, they're not waiting around for people to tell them to have ideas and to be creative. They're just doing it and becoming, be loved by the people. And I think that's very Liverpool. You think on the other side and you see Cream and you look what they've done in that story, do you know what I mean? And, remember the Beatles weren't loved by the city at one point and they still made it despite, do you know what I mean? And that, I feel like that's quite unique and great about the city, that spirit lives on. I do think there's challenges for us that are maybe a little bit more unique to us, but I feel like we do a lot of stuff great. And I've got to shout out the LCR Music Board as well, because I know Sarah's on here and Kevin and Claire, but I think even that, being able to pull key people from a sector, people who are really successful and really busy, but getting them together to be able to think of a common goal that doesn't just benefit them directly, you know what I mean? Like many things in the past I felt were almost mafia-esque. This is like about how does it help the sector, and you can see the results of it, and then you get into like the cluster funding stuff, like the SIF money, and then how that helps with the, the COVID recovery and stuff like that. And, again, with that, I've got to shout someone like Kev out, because Kev helped me 10 years ago, and he's still helping a lot of organisations and individuals that probably wouldn't have any kind of voice or would be cut out the conversation. And that's what Liverpool seems to do really well. They listen, do you know what I mean, and adapt. And that's why I think this time period now is so exciting, because I think a lot of people are listening and a lot of people have the will. And a lot of people before who I think felt like they had the answers are admitting they don't and are listening and prepared to be led. And I think that's special. It's very special.
We've got a question in the chat from Emma that says, following the work that you've been doing, are you feeling that there is real positive change? And what's the biggest excuse you hear for not making change?
Nationally and locally, I'll say I think there are changes going on. I feel like some of the activity is missing the mark and is missing the point. I hate tokenism. It worries me, especially at times like this where there's great opportunity. So I feel like sometimes the research and the connection and the understanding is sometimes not really there. So then there's some mistakes, and some of these large organisations are probably making the mistakes because they're so wanting to visibly be doing something that they're either dragging their feet and making mistakes that's in just not getting to the point. They're not fit for purpose. So a lot of organisations don't have the people internally to do it. So when they're doing it, they're doing it from a perspective of not really understanding that space of diversity and quality and grassroots, and how you actually develop talent, both, creative talent and, people who make things happen, behind closed doors. So, yeah, I feel like positive things are happening because the conversation's there. But I do think there needs to be more openness to bringing in people who live in that space and have lived in that space and have real life experience and actually can really strategically put it together. And that leads me to another thing that I think is missing in this city, and it is reflected in other cities. I still don't think there's people who understand, who are in positions of influence. I still think it's very much crumb based. Here's 10 grand, go and do your thing, or here's we'll do this and we'll profile you. Like, and no offense, but I can't build a career profile alone. Do you know what I mean? And a lot of people can't. What we want to do is be, and this is for any minority, you want to have a fair shot, and you want to have equity in the growth of whatever you do. And if you can work at a level of strategy as opposed to just delivery, that's probably the ultimate goal for people, to not necessarily have to just do and burn ourselves out. A lot of times I think we're asked to do stuff for free because it's our duty. And obviously we feel like we want to contribute, and that's a passion of ours, but like it's still very unfair treatment, and I still feel like and when I say we, I mean minorities in the broader sense, whether that's gender or race or sexual orientation, we're still very much brought in a very parameter-based way, and I think that's still where we've got a long way to go. Do you know what I mean? And what happened after Sunday reaffirms it. It can't be conversations when it's flavour of the month or it's a fear. It's got to be conversation because we really understand the actual worth of diversity and inclusion and empowerment of people who have got voices, who are bloody great at what they do, but sometimes they're just not given a level playing field, if that makes sense. I hope that answers the question.
We've got 4 minutes left on this section, so we have got another question in there from Tracy Aaron.
Yeah, Tracy says that you're making a lot of sense and asking you what you think.
I hope so.
She said she's thinking about levelling up and what you think about that kind of language being used around COVID recovery.
I developed a project called Level Up, so like I think the language is one. I think what does it do? I think that's what I'm more concerned about. Like I know, and I get it because I know language is very important, but I was like, what does it actually do? How does that program actually do what it says on the tin? So if it's about leveling up, how does it bring people to the same level? How does it do that? And I think that should be the focus of any type of critique of programs. Does it? And we've got to get past this, I suppose, this plaster band-aid type of thing of like, let's just put this on quickly and it looks good and it looks like it solved the problem, but it's actually deeper than that. What you need is keyhole surgery or whatever, and we need to just make sure it's if a project's called Leveling Up, but when you look deeper, it is actually going to do that and deliver that, then it's I think same with Power Up. If we launched Power Up and it sounded great, but it wasn't actually powered up the way people needed to be powered up based on research and speaking to them and all the things that they need once they're in the position where once they've got a shot and they're on the same level as everyone, they can actually succeed or sustain their success or development, then the title is irrelevant. So I think as long as it delivers on the commitments, the title or the pitch or whatever shouldn't be seen negatively, unless it's like racist language, obviously. Okay.
We've got 2 minutes left.
Should we do one more?
I promise I'll answer this in less than 2 minutes.
Has anyone got any other questions they would like to ask Yao?
I've got a question.
Go ahead.
My internet keeps going, so sorry if it goes off, but what kind of support do you think you need, whether it's from like the council or the government or other businesses, to help you carry on doing what you do and moving forward to make more of an impact?
Long time, by the way. How are you? I think for me and organisations like myself, I do feel that strategic level is the challenge. I think, I look and go, really, I've never made a majority of my work is not in Liverpool. And really, before LIMF, I didn't have any connection to this. I was in the city and I was delivering this city, but all the awards and the impact was nationally. We got national support. I got national support and national investments, commercial investments and engagement before I got anything from the city. Do you know what I mean? And that's no disrespect, but I still feel the same now. It's like, predominantly I believe people like myself and Aaron and Kitchen, like, Sart and Kitchen Street, a lot of these are poor. A lot of us are still put in roles of delivery only. And not necessarily, like, even when everything was going on, a lot of people wanted to speak to me last May, June. But I was still going, but none of you come and want to engage me in delivering work. None of you want to work with me on a strategic level. None of you are talking about board of directors and you know what I mean? Being on what you tend to do is go, there's this thing which I think you're good for, deliver this thing. Here's a small amount of money, or here's a bid, put in a bid for 500 to get you there. That's not going to sustain us or grow us or allow us to get to the point where, again, we've got a lot of organisations that want to give back, but my point is sometimes there's people that look at these organisations like myself, or like a lot of female artists and entrepreneurs that are coming up who go, I don't want to be in your organisation, I want my own like your organisation. So stop talking about me fitting into your organisation at a low level. Talk about either me coming in at a managerial level, or talk about helping me build my own. Do you know what I mean? And that's what's missing from the conversation here. I'd have to say that very strongly, because again, I had a conversation with a female DJ before who I see as an entrepreneur, and the way she's talking is like she's just going to DJ, and I'm going, you're the next Annie Mac. You should be talking about multiple businesses and writing a book and all this. But the view on any man is like, you can only do that thing which we expect you to do, and then there's no real progression routes that are put in place. Again, not saying everyone should give them, but I think that's the conversation. If people are really about this equality in culture and tourism and all that, let's start having a slightly different conversation.
Andrew, can we get your question?
Okay, yeah, it's probably a half-hour discussion, but what Giles just said really leads on to what I'm thinking. So, of course, we have cultural tradition. Okay, so we have those pigeonholes that exist, and that's attached to commerce. So we invest in people that often tick a specific box, so therefore we can promote and sell them because that's what the broader culture understands them to create or produce. So in fashion terms, the British Fashion Council level, what we're trying to do is do away with the urban category of fashion, which is really a byword for black fashion. So if you're a black fashion designer, you have to specifically produce urban clothing. What happens if you don't? Well, then where are you? And actually the answer is nowhere. So I know you're going to be struggling with this yourself, with all of these these programs you're working on. But how are you going about trying to kind of dismantle that so we can get black DJs who end up like Annie Mac and
yeah.
Not, you see what I mean?
But that's all, imposter syndrome and all that is a massive one. Sometimes we don't even dare to dream, and this is getting obviously, and this is again, I'm talking about any minority. Like it could be a white female DJ who just thinks I can't be a DJ, and like that's a job, because there is some out there, but maybe Annie is one of the only one, or a black female DJ who never thinks they could do. So it's a lot of that, and I see that at the high level. There's a national radio DJ who's across 3 networks at the moment, who's doing amazing work, but as a black female DJ, so we're talking about intersectionality again, she doesn't believe that she can be that big. And so I know that limiting belief is there, so that's a challenge in our own personal selves. How do we deal with that, and that's why Power Up, we're doing a lot around the mental rebuilding, because it's important, and again, something that's not talked about a lot. But then also, like, again, in Power Up, we've got artists who are doing country and artists who are doing rock. Nova Twins are on it, and it's an artist called Simeon who's a country artist, and it's just about understanding that those people exist, and we've got to have that. And then you talk about fashion, if you think about what is urban fashion, if you want to call it that, it's high fashion. It's mixing of those things. It's so developed, but the term keeps it locked. And I remember a couple of years ago with LIMF, someone said it's a bit of an urban festival, and I was like, what does that even mean? Because policy-wise, if you're talking about black music, it's not even 25% black music. But maybe there's a lot more music influenced by it, like house and stuff. But like to just limit a thing when you see someone's face is shocking, and we should be past that conversation. But so it's that thing. I think it's in ourselves, but I think we've got to challenge those things, those perceptions of what we can and can't do. Do you know what I mean? I can do music, and I'm conscious during this period of time, if we're talking about race, I don't want to be pigeonholed into doing black stuff, because my understanding of diversity is understanding of diversity. Do you know what I mean? And inclusion. No one has to tell me to make our lineups 50-50. Before that was a thing, I was already trying to make sure that was happening, because I'm just naturally in tune with that. I don't want to be locked into dealing with black music. I understand music. I understand artists. I've been in Nashville and done projects and been in recording studios. I know music, but it's that thing of like, we've also got to, with ourselves be disciplined, but also we've got to make sure we're not pigeonholed, and we've got to be able to grow. And that's what I'm saying about being able to come to a strategic level and at some point, but outside of just the box where people think, oh, it's about music and it's black. Okay, cool, yeah, that can't be the conversation we should still be having, because once we've proved it. Same with you, Andrew. You know what I mean? No one should be calling you about urban fashion. It's disrespectful. Same way with I've booked female artists and DJs for events, and I've had conversations where they felt they were just booked because that's where a lot of their bookings are coming, because they're female. I said, there's no way I wouldn't put you on a stage if you weren't good. Do you know what I mean? And we've got to get to that stage, and especially within Liverpool, because I think a lot of what we're talking about is the remarketing, or I wouldn't say the remarketing because we've got a lot of great stuff, the building on this narrative. And this is why the COVID thing slightly worries me, because I'm going, when we're recovered, is all that offer that we had in 2018, 2019, is that still going to be there? Those small organisations and festivals and events and, entrepreneurs, are they going to be there because they had the, no pun intended, they had the colour, they had that extra bit of taste to the offer here. Now, if they're not, strangely enough, we would have gone back 10 years. And we can't do that now. We're meant to be a forward, seeking, looking cultural city. I think we've got a real opportunity to get it right, but this is a crucial time to make sure that everybody comes along for it as well, and everybody has a fair shot of being a part of it, as opposed to the way it was 5-10 years ago.
On that point, thank you. What we're now going to do is we're going to start sorting out the breakout rooms. That was a really helpful way to frame the dialogue we want to have in the smaller groups now. So thank you so much. Thank you for the insightful questions from the people in the room. We appreciate that. So what we're now going to do is, let me just get here. Aaron is going to organise people deftly in the background into breakout rooms. And what we're going to hopefully achieve with this is we're going to think about, as smaller groups now, what are the challenges around reducing inequalities as we build back better. So some of the stuff that Yao was saying there around self-belief, self-perception, support at a city region level, it not being piecemeal funding, those kind of things. What are like the really big challenges that we're all dealing with when it comes to supporting destination tourism and culture? Really significantly, everyone in this room has different lived experiences, which is exactly why you're here. So what we want to hear from you is, what does change look like to you as an individual? Because that is how we understand everyone's experience. We need to hear what you think. That's exactly why we want you here. So tell us what change looks like to you. What does success look like to you as an individual? And then any tips and best practices you can share. So with your facilitator in your room, you're going to have one facilitator of our sparkling lineup that I did previously. You're also going to have one member of the Matchstick team. They're going to be taking notes. Facilitators, if you would like to take notes, please do, but we are there to help do that. Ultimately, all you have to do is be your charming selves and ask these questions. You've all got speaker notes and stuff, so if you guys need to refer back to it, please do. But that's effectively what we're going to do now. We're going to try and give you guys enough time and space to talk. We're going to go for 25 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then we're going to come back together. We're going to do a key insight that's going to be shared by the facilitators. So facilitators, try and distill the amazing conversation we're going to have into one thought as best you can, and that's going to be the thing we're going to feed back. And then from there, our team will collect everything and inform you what the next steps are going to look like. So in theory, we should be able to do that now. Let's see if Aaron has worked his magic with the breakout rooms.
Another minute or two.
Another minute or two, okay. At this point, if anyone would like to have a very quick comfort break, please do. And then you may be in a breakout room at the time you come back. So feel free to take a quick break, everyone, and we'll sort this out for you.
I feel like this would be a good place for that music we were talking about earlier.
I feel like we should try and think about a good fiery theme song, and the only thing I can think of is We Didn't Start the Fire, which is lame. So, got any other?
You can't complain about Billy Joel. A landmark.
No, it's got to be the Prodigy, hasn't it? Surely. That's the obvious one.
I'm aware of the fact that I'm sort of looking like the lead singer back in the day as well. Maybe that is the most appropriate thing.
I'm not going to attempt to play any of the instruments that are sitting next to me right now.
Well, there's also a drum kit next to me, but I feel like that's not going to travel very well over Zoom, so we won't do that.
I was on a call earlier with the Centre for Alternative Technology, and Billy had just bought a Batsuki at the weekend. So we were doing so I think I mean I don't know how much everyone on the call has got things just out of sight, but I feel like there've been a few kind of instruments just within reach, but out of view. So feel free to.
I'm really excited.
I think the rooms are sorted.
Cool. Okay. We will get everyone into breakout rooms now. So if you guys want to jump back on, we will put you into rooms, and we'll see you all in there. Thank you. Just make sure everyone gets in okay. Everyone just wants to join the rooms. And do you want to wait and see everyone's in there?
Yeah, will do.
Yeah, I'll go join my room.
Leaf, Jackie, Les, are people having trouble getting into the breakout rooms? Or just Jackie and Leaf now?
Sorry, man, I was just getting a coffee. I've got Yeah, I've got notification here. All right, just going in now.
See you in there.
See you,
man. Jackie, it's just you if you're there. I'll give you a minute or two. If you can hear me, I don't know. Okay, I'm going to join the my breakout room. If you have trouble getting in, just drop me a message on email or somewhere. If you can hear me anyway.
Yeah, here we go.
Hooray, Aaron, you've got the questions. I was just thinking, oh God, don't need me to remember them. It's an absolute nightmare.
Well, don't worry there. How is everybody? Did everyone find Yao's Q&A insightful?
Yeah, really good.
It's great.
Yao's always insightful, isn't
he? Yeah, got a lot to talk about, hasn't
he? Yeah, he can talk.
Okay, should we kind of crack on, I suppose? Have you got that document I sent, Claire, that does have the questions on and stuff?
It'll be in my email. Do you want me to go and get it? Not literally go and get it. Right, if I go off though, don't hate me. My technology's rubbish.
Okay, no worries. Yeah, I'm just
Has anyone else got it rather than...
But I made it just a couple of notes. I think it was just about what can we do to reduce inequalities, what does change look like, and then what does success look like in the sort of brief terms.
Yeah, sorry,
does that roughly sound right, Aaron?
Sorry, I'm just getting somebody into this breakout room. But yeah, it was it's what are the challenges, what are the what change do we want to see, and what tips and best practice can we share? And it's kind of specific to them. I'll get it up on my screen actually. All right, Dad.
Good lad.
How are you?
All right. I just up the walls setting up for Sunday. Man.
Okay.
And now, Aaron, is it about looking at what Yao was talking about and using that as the start of it?
Yeah, kind of. It's about kind of talking about these 4 challenges which have been identified by the council and their cultural strategy, which you probably would have had some hand in writing on, I'd imagine. And just kind of talking about exploring them 3 questions around these challenges. So, what are the challenges around these? What is the change we'd like to see, and what tips and best practice can we share from either, ourselves as an individual or our company or our industry or sector, are the things that we feel are going well. Does that make sense? So we can kind of kick off by just talking briefly about like what people understand the challenges to be around, around diversity and equality. Maybe we focus on that first.
Yeah. Go on.
I was going to say, is there anything on there that's in that description there, socioeconomic, geographical, unequal access to education and opportunity, gender imbalances, discrimination? Is there anything there that kind of jumps out to people as like one of the main kind of challenges or issues for Liverpool?
Can you hear me? Yeah. So I'm Rory. I run a Positive Vibration, which is a reggae festival based in the Baltic Triangle, and I want to talk about sort of gender and the just sort of key change initiative and getting lineups as 50-50. And we as an organisation, as a festival, strive to have more of a balance. But there's something deeper rooted, especially with like certain music like reggae, where there aren't a lot of female reggae artists in the UK. And it's as I say, it's easy for people to look at your lineup and dismiss that, and actually there is something deeper rooted. And I work with one of the leading reggae artists, but she's based in Jamaica. A lot of female reggae artists are based in Jamaica. So I think music generally is very male dominated, of course it is, but certain music is even more male dominated. And as Yao said, no one wants to be the kind of token female DJ or female artist. It's about quality as well, the quality of the artist. It is about selling tickets. So what do we do? How do we kind of resolve this at the very core?
Yeah, I'm not sure how we resolve it, but I do kind of resonate with that challenge, because like we have a similar thing for Scouse female rappers. So we've got a rap series called Wrapped Up, and obviously like ideally we would have it like much closer to being an even gender split than it is, but Scouse female rappers are quite hard to come by. So I suppose like the overarching challenge is how do you address that when there's been kind of no representation for so long? There's almost like there's no kind of culture for it for female reggae artists in the UK or Scouse female rappers. So I suppose like how do we kind of overcome that, or how?
I think because it's become so apparent, like when you do lineups now, and a lot of people getting called out, especially in festivals recently, and obviously everything being so focused on social media has been so wide open with COVID, and everyone's spending a lot more time on it with screen time. I think the challenge is we have to start that movement now, and we've always been quite conscious at it at 24 Kitchen Street, and I feel it takes to bridge that gap. You have to spend more time looking for more talent and taking a chance on artists, because half these artists aren't as big because they're not getting as booked as much, or they're not as visible to the public. And I think like it will continue to be the same unless we do take that chance and show the equality on lineups and bookings. And it is hard. It's very hard. It's the same with like certain genres of music when you're trying to be more diverse with race, with anything. It's like in certain genres of music, for example, techno, like you try and do as much as you can for your local artists and DJs. And for example, like there's not many black techno DJs in Liverpool, and even though it is a black music genre, you know, obviously originate like most of its origin arguably is, you know, the Detroit, but you know there's arguments that it came from parts of Europe and even like the pioneers were, you know, from other countries. But it does start with trying to make an example of it now and just pushing that boat out and spend a little more time with your networks and using it. And it's definitely harder with certain music genres than others, especially where, you know, depending on the culture of the country of origin or where the mass of the artists like originate from. It's like the internet's made it a lot easier now, with a lot of music being more international rather than geographically based in one particular area. But it's the only thing you can do to close that gap with any sort of equality in any direction, especially with gender, it is just making the use of your contacts, reaching out to other promoters who are doing similar stuff to you in other cities. But you know, when it's an international music, it is a lot harder. Like I definitely understand Rory's frustration and, you know, the promoters, but like there is people who aren't doing enough. But it's a collaborative effort across all of the if it's live, recorded, you know, like even from the big boys, like it is just about taking that chance and just opening it up, because all in all, it's pretty split, especially when it comes to, you know, the dominant like genders, whether being male, female, trans, etc. Like there's an audience and a following in every nook and cranny of music. And like obviously Liverpool isn't the best when it comes to, like, doesn't have as much crossover as say Manchester, where there's a lot of bookings in Manchester that will sell out in Liverpool. Like you're lucky if you can do like 50 tickets with them. But it's just like, again, it's just taking that chance and showing that, being conscious of trying to make it as diverse as possible so that the next generation, the gap isn't as wide.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And it's actually a conversation that we had at Sound City a couple of days ago, because we had our just like a team bonding team day out, and we were discussing that. And Steve Wonder, who books it, was saying when we signed up to the 50-50 pledge and things like that, it did change the way that he booked the festival, because he was the first year that he did it. Different mindset in terms of how we had to do it, because I think, and fair enough, with Sound City maybe years before, it was probably seen as a white indie kind of fucking guitar band festival, do you know what I mean? And you think, look at like the last couple of years, and it was Mabel and Loyal Kana and that, they have made that step. And I think festivals, and you have to take, you know, music so impactful and things like that in terms of what we can do in the community. Like you're right, what you're saying is that you just have to take that chance, do you know what I mean? And you have to commit to it. And what you were saying, Rory, about, you know, not a lot of female reggae artists, and you're working with someone out in Jamaica and things like that, but obviously it'd be difficult to bring them over, and that's what we've looked at Sound City, and especially with Guest House, is looking more at a hybrid model when it comes to festivals and things like that. So utilising the live streaming side of things, and again, that's something that we're looking to do for October. Is, you know, as we're a showcase festival, probably this year, potentially next, we might not be able to bring our international partners over like we usually do, but we are given the platform through Guest House, and you know, through the hybrid model, to be able to continue to perform, and not just perform but engage and make money you know, through performances with their audiences. And that's something, again, you mentioned, Sarge, like that concept of collaboration. I would like to see a lot more collaboration in the industry, especially in Liverpool, do you know what I mean? Because there's so much going on. And, you know, if we all pull together, there's no reason why we can't collaborate on one big event, or a big event that's, you know, really impactful for people and inspiring. And I think that's something that we could definitely look at doing, do you know what I mean? Collaborating more within the city.
Yeah, I totally agree about collaborating.
You just mentioned big events, which I think is really interesting, because it's very male. So the event sector, full stop, is really male. We've just been doing some work that you'll know about when we opened the nightclub and we did Festival Republic in Sefton Park. But you'd be on a screen and it's all men, from the highest up all the way through to that. Well, you'll know because the events team in Liverpool is very female. In fact, I think it's part of Mandy McNichol. It is all female, and that is really, really, really rare. But I think that idea about, for me, I think there's a real fundamental thing that is around education at the moment, and the fact that the arts, music, drama, dance, they're all gone really from education. So where a musician's going to come from if they're not being taught in school to do something different than kind of academic subjects? And I think there's something for Liverpool in that, in leading the way and kind of starting to look at how you get working class kids into the arts by changing the curriculum in some ways, because I think in 10 years' time, who's going to go to study anything further? You know, who's going to do that? Because no one's being exposed to it in kind of schools anymore, like they used to when I was younger. I mean, when I was younger, kind of when I was in my 20s, where there was loads of masses of, you know, we used to go in schools all the time to do workshops, to do work, and it's just not happening anymore.
Can I ask you, from like a Coach Liverpool perspective, which of them kind of 4 challenges on the screen that you perceive to be like the most kind of vital?
I think for me, the management is one, but you will hope that will come through, because I think it's very interesting for me having a new mayor who's a black woman, and for me, automatically the dial's changed. And you feel it. So you feel it in rooms that are normally full of men, you know, in my council world. And it does feel like the dial's changed really, really positively. And that's having someone in a leadership role that is representative of a huge amount of the city. And I think once people start seeing that, that whole thing starts to kind of, you would hope that starts to kind of tumble. So for me, that's it. I think inequality in Liverpool is really, it always has been unequal. You know, you've got kids who've got nothing here, you know, and it's how they get into doing something. And I think the whole thing with me in the arts is about, actually, you give a kid a choice and they can do drama and use all that creative energy to do drama, or they find something else to do. And that's my experience of working in Speak and working in Dingle, working in communities. And that for me is the biggest thing. But I think it starts young.
Can I open that question up to everyone else? What do other people feel is like the biggest kind of challenge out of them 4 on the board?
You know, sorry, I was so late. I got my time mixed up. I'm sorry. I've just jumped into it. But the access thing, is that the next point, or is this included in this one?
Say that again.
Access.
Yeah, well, out of all these 4 things, can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can. It's just we've had some, just to reiterate on a few, we've had some issues with access. We've tried to, you know, for people with like physical or like, you know, mental problems that can give them difficulty in accessing public areas, which is so easy for able-bodied people. It's like to try and make for especially venues, like obviously music festivals, they can start from scratch and you know, implement something to make something accessible for someone who isn't able-bodied. But with accessing like a venue that exists, when you're trying to you know, give somebody the option of being able to see a DJ or see a live act, you find like it's so expensive to make it like accessible to everyone. Like you've got to think like a ramp has to have a 1 meter drop per 10 meters. So if you have like a raised entrance, like depending if it's on a public road or it's on your own property, it can absolutely eliminate, floor space, which is sort of essential for you to be able to bring bodies, able bodies into, to put money in the till. And when it comes to making multiple levels accessible, like a lift in itself, the amount of money you have to spend on like structural surveys, etc. And lifts aren't cheap, and you try and make it as accessible to everybody, depending on whatever their like condition is. It can be an absolute nightmare because it's not cheap, and it can take forever to. A lot of planning with it being civil, structural, and then obviously the lift itself, the hardware, including signage, ramps. It's like to be able to make it accessible to all people, that there has to be more access to some type of funding to make sure that people can able to experience the same opportunities as everyone else.
Yeah. Is that, I've seen your message in the chat, Claire, is that something that's going to be particularly relevant after COVID with social distancing and new kind of measures in place for venues and stuff?
I've got to be careful because you maybe just go, right, we need to do this then. So I'm slightly having to stop myself just coming in all the time. I think it'd be really good to have this conversation with Harry Doyle, who's the new council lead for culture and tourism, because it's his absolute passion. And I'm wondering whether if all the you all talked about collaborating earlier, whether something where all the venues get together to come back with a proposal to us that we can then talk to government about. I'm just wondering whether there's something in that is about accessibility for all, and how. So if you cost up your venue, if you cost up 24 Kitchen Street, and then we multiply that by, however many venues there are in Liverpool, I don't know any, but 20, 30, 40, 50 venues. We can maybe think about talking to government about a levelling up bid that is properly levelling up about that. Because as a venue, you're not going to be able to afford that. That is a proper, when you're trying to get back on your feet after COVID, that is just not going to be your priority, because you're going to have to get people through the door to pay tickets and buy boots. You're not going to be able to. I'm just wondering, out of this, Aaron, whether we could do you know what I mean? We could put something together.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely do something like, I think from this event anyway, we'll be planning some kind of actionable next steps. That's kind of the whole point of Firestarters, to tell you the truth. But definitely that sounds really interesting. And I'll maybe loop us all together in an email afterwards.
Aaron, just to go back to your first point, I think with regards to the challenges faced there, I think there's a lot of structure, policies and strategy in place, and you'd like to see that they will have the right effect, and people will be getting into places, and there can be like-minded people who want to make a difference, and they're in those positions of power. Just as Claire said there, you can take an issue, you can look at it, and you can turn and make that action. So you've obviously got to make the case to get the investments and all that sort of stuff. So I think they're all sort of doable and achievable. I think the really hardest thing is the baseline inequality and where we start off from, because it's so hard to address those geographical differences, the level of that level of self-worth of individuals, and getting that self-confidence, as it was discussed before. I think that's so ingrained and so difficult to get over and change that. So to me, that would be the most challenging area. I think the policy and procedures and strategy are generally in place, and you can be tweaked and moved along, and you'll see that. But I think that is going to be, that's one of the areas that I think is always a conundrum and will always sort of exist in some shape or form.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, just on my point as well. I mean, I'm relatively new to the music industry and creative industry. I think it personally be very lucky working with somewhere like Sound City, where I have Becky Ayres and Joe Whitty and people like that. And females in management who are great at what they do, great at inspiring other people as well. So the inequality is the thing that I recognise the most in terms of being the biggest challenge as well, because especially in Liverpool, if you look into the grassroots, and someone like myself who spends most of your time like doing scouting into music and stuff, the innovation and the talent is there. Do you know what I mean? It's always there. I think that just breathes in the city, but it is the inequality that will be the issue for people ultimately. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge that I recognise there. Like, and it comes back to what you were saying as well. I recognise that as well from when I finished school. Like, there was no real opportunity there to get involved in that kind of stuff in school, like the arts and stuff. And if you're not doing it in school and you're going to try and get it involved in it outside school, it's going to cost money, do you know what I mean? And some people that, don't have that.
I think participation and kind of accessibility is a kind of big one which spreads across all these types of things, doesn't it? I mean, Aidan's talking about like accessibility for clubs and stuff like that, but I've heard Claire talk earlier about like trying to increase participation among working class kids. Where do we kind of think the solutions for that is, like, for increasing participation in arts and culture in the city? Like, what is it? Where are we lacking at the moment? I think there's definitely something to be said about about maybe investing in some new stuff. And like, I feel like a lot of the music. I was gonna say, I feel like a lot of the kind of music programs and stuff like that have been around for a while. Are a bit like outdated, some of them. How do I unmute you guys, or are you muted? I'll go on.
Right, I'm not muted. Yeah, like we've been open for about 8 years, and we only got into knowing that there was even funding pots out there to support, the program we do, or for anything through the likes of like the Arts Council and PRS, etc. And it's strange to find out like a lot of the say elite artistic performances such as like opera and ballet, like you see how much money they get as as MPOs or through the Arts Council itself, and it's frustrating to see that like a lot of the stuff that we're into is still considered art, but like it's not as highly funded as like the elite, like the stuff like opera and classical music. It's really baffling, but it's like 90% of the ticket is pretty much funded through government activities, like government funded, even though the people who tend to go see performances like that are like the upper echelon of earners. It's like, how are they getting their tickets so heavily subsidized over people who actually need that help to be able to go and see certain different types of genres or art forms?
Can I ask you something about that side? This is what we spoke about before, obviously, because for you don't know, me and Dad partner on a few things, including the Jamaica Street Carnival Party, which is this year by the Baltic. But on that note of like the ballet and stuff like that getting all the funding, why is that? Are they tapped into different networks to the likes of us?
Guess so. Like it's not
class, isn't it? Everything goes down to class.
Yeah. Like you got it's obvious with what happened in COVID with like, not to go off topic, like people making a lot of money in high places that shouldn't have got contracts, but I'm not saying there is a bit of sort of that cliquey. It runs through every part of our society, I think. This is just my opinion, but it'd be good to see some of that trickle down to the people that need it more, rather than just keeping that elite audience getting what they want to see in.
Yeah. So it's cronyism, It's that kind of who you know thing being tapped into the right networks. But I suppose go on,
I think just to come in on that, because obviously we're not the Arts Council, but you've got load of it is historical. So loads of it is because They've always done that, and that's always what they've funded. And they've got organisations that are big national organisations that they've bought. I'm not saying it's right, but a load of it is because they've got these organisations that they funded the same way for, 20, 30 years. And then they've got, so I'm not saying it's right, but there is a whole historical thing around funding that is to do with those organisations being national. I'm not saying they are, but them being called national. Which if you're in a region, this is my big thing. If you're in a region, you're not called national, even though some of the things you do are national. So we've got national museums, but we only got those by default because they thought they were going to sell the silver. So they nationalised the museums, and the majority of national organisations are in London. And that's the problem. You've got national organisations that are all based in London, serving London, more or less, with a bit of outreach. So there's a whole historical thing there that the Arts Council do need to unpick.
I just want to say as well, I think what's really important is, obviously money's important, but having that support network and actually having people tell you that these funding pots are available, helping you through the process. I manage District Music Venue in the Baltic Triangle, and like 24 Kitchen Street, we were supported by the Music Venues Trust. A small team of people, a couple basically, that have just helped like 600, 700 venues, help them go through the Arts Council application, they go to government, and without these people, a lot of venues wouldn't have survived the last year, because all right, there was Arts Council Culture Recovery money, but it was so difficult, the application process. And having that guidance from people like the Music Venues Trust, like organisations, was just so valuable. And this is where I think where people like us can come. We've all got different skills, we've all got different experiences and knowledge, and we're the ones that will help support that next generation.
Yeah, I agree. And it comes down to the collaboration thing, doesn't it? I think we've all mentioned at some point. I think it's important that going forward there needs to be more effort, I think, to collaborate together to really, make a difference, to be honest.
Well, 30 seconds.
Yeah,
and hopefully Kev McManus can help with that. I always land everything on Kev, so Kev McManus can help with it.
Yeah, I think we're all going to go back to our breakout rooms now. I think we're all to get dragged out.
Cheers.
Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
This is, where that concept of kind of change and transformation and how that's sort of handled. We were sort of looking into a piece of work around, does anyone know the concept of appreciative inquiry? There's this sort of idea of like building on sort of strengths and what you can actually put into practice sort of now. And so it's not just something where there's a load of discussion about things. People get annoyed because stuff isn't good enough or stuff isn't right, and you're thinking about all the problems and nothing changes. But I will happily stop wittering away if Aaron or Ruth want to take over.
So thank you everyone for doing your breakout rooms. I think, as always with the breakout rooms, Lily said just as ours was like 3 seconds to end, we were like, no, we want to keep talking. So if you're in a scenario where you want to keep your conversations going, please let us know and we can do introductions for you. What we'd like to do now is turn to our exceptional facilitators and ask them to choose just one thing that came out from their group that they felt was perhaps the most useful or insightful thing. So I'm going to go to Andrew first, if that's okay. Andrew, what was your insight?
Right, okay. So we didn't get very far. I'm going to be honest with you. We didn't get very far for a reason. And the reason is obviously it's a huge topic, huge, absolutely huge. But we've been here before. And Les said something really pertinent. He said, Here's Liverpool in the 70s and nothing's changed. So my question as an answer is going to be, well, how do we actually change? Nothing's changed. How do we stop having this continuous pattern? Because it is now on the loop. I feel it. I am still the only black academic, or hopefully it's going to be another one coming in September, fingers crossed, that I've employed on behalf of Fashion at LGMU. But how do we change the fact that, it could still be the same, in 20 years or in 10 years if we don't change anything now? So the question is, how do we change this nothing change problem? Now, the other thing that came out that was quite interesting, how organisations have to deal with metrics and prescribe metrics, often from higher organisations that deal with tick boxing as well, which induces tokenism and all sorts of other negative practice. So, where does that language come from, and how do we change that? How do we stop having to have these tick boxes that end up being negative anyway? So I would say that these are the conversations from the discussion that really now deal with people who are experienced, which I feel that this group is beginning to deal with. Understanding, diversity is a very broad concept that we need to also strip apart a little bit, just like the term BAME now seems to be pushed aside. Because BAME describes something that's too broad to manage in any singular conversation. So how do we begin to have specific conversations? I would suggest, because we are at that early conversation. It's like we were describing the trauma of George Floyd, and now we're describing the trauma of Rashford, Saka and Sancho. So let's call them the England three, right? We're dealing with that trauma. So we're back to that conversation stage again. So who's in the room? Who are we talking to? Who have experience? Who have insight? And who from above is in the room to really take on those conversation points? So how do we change the system, which is what we're really talking about? And it's only if you change the system and the structure and the people in charge of those systems that I think we might begin to see some change. But what I'm basically saying is, I feel like we're at square one again. It's just kind of full circle constantly. Yeah.
Okay, that's a really helpful thought from your group. Thank you for that. I'm now going to go to Sarah Ogle. Sarah, can you tell us what the insight was from your team or group?
Well, we had a great conversation about many things. And I think the things that the main thing that we kind of agreed on that we wanted to feed back, because like three of us representing organisations that work a lot with young people, was very much about how do we inspire young people and positivity and creativity in young people to then go on and build on what's happening now and the changes we're trying to make, and that actually by finding the inspirational people to talk to young people to make them realise how, for example, there are creative jobs that you don't necessarily have to have a education or be a certain type of person to work in a particular area. We talked a bit about pigeonholing quite early on in the conversation. But I think, so that was really our insight. We boiled it down really to that. But the other, if I can have a part two insight, was more of this as a way of getting things done and making connections with people to make change.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. I'm going to go to Emma next. Emma, what was the outcome from your group?
So we had a lot of conversation about sort of tokenism and virtue signalling, things like saying, oh gosh, aren't we progressive? And actually that is a real math for making change happen. So actually calling that out and saying, no, that's not right. The homophobic attacks that have happened in Liverpool, for instance, an awful lot of people are saying, gosh, isn't that terrible? This is awful. And which of course it is, but actually they're not isolated to this month, and they're not the only attacks that have happened. These are ongoing. So this idea as to making them exceptional isn't right. We actually need to call it out and say, one attack is too many attacks, so we need to change the rhetoric around that. We're not good enough yet. Until there is no oppression in our city, we're not good enough yet. So that was kind of, we sort of got to this point where we thought that maybe by doing that and by changing systems of agreement, so wherever anything is rewarded with investment or whatever, actually if the monitoring for that was about intersectional monitoring and not just numerics around how many black people or how many gay people you've got on your board, actually if it was much more qualitative than that, you would start seeing change in boardrooms and there would be a trickle-down effect from that. So collectively, we think that the whole thing is about changing the rhetoric at the top and making sure that there are wider monitoring opportunities to say we're including at all levels.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yep, really interesting. That's where the conversation went. My cat's decided to join us at this point, so Suki's here to join the conversation, everyone. Can I please go to Sarah Lovell next, who is in my room? Sarah, what were the insights from our group you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some similar issues that others have touched on. We talked quite a lot about the pigeonholing and particularly around the lack of diversity in the existing kind of larger organisations and institutions and the mechanisms for making those changes. But I think that the main thing that I thought that struck me out of this conversation that we had was that we often there are examples of people who are making changes, but we're not very good at sharing. We're not very good at optimizing some of the resources that we have, the knowledge that we have, and making that something that's an ongoing learning process rather than just a flavour of the month thing because another crisis has come to sort of the fore. So there was some really good examples of kind of how can we share better sort of guidance and research and resources and not just constantly this one off. And it kind of went back to an earlier point around the short-termism that I know that Yao referred to, which is often in funding or is often in the project or is often in the initiative, which is a real that is a real challenge, and that's certainly at a political level as well because of the mechanisms of the ways in which money becomes available, certainly through political-led organisations like the Combined Authority. But I think we have got to break that chain. We've got to break that cycle in order to argue for the need for longer-term investment, for sustainability, for reinvestment rather than constantly, new monies for the next new thing. And that was something that I think we were particularly getting onto there about that more sustained approach and that builds on the strengths and assets that are there and builds on some of those successes that have happened and progresses it so that we move beyond the constant Groundhog Day, which we're often in a cycle of.
Excellent, thank you for that. We've just got 3 more summaries and then we can finish up with what we're going to do next. Kevin, can I call on you next just to do a bit of a quick summary? I'm aware of the time, so if people need to dip out, do feel free to do so. It's fine. Go on, Kevin.
Yeah, no, I'll be quick. I mean, it's similar to what other people have said, really. It was, I think, a few people in the group like myself have been around a little while, and conscience that we've seen, initiatives and statements and manifestos come and go and not much changes. And I think that, particularly some of the work that Fiona's been doing is looking at how you change that. And the only way to do that we came up with was changing leadership. So it's stuff that people have talked about before. It's the people at the top, and it's not just it's great that we've got a black female mayor, but it needs more people at the top to make real change. It needs because those people at the top you control policy, you control funding, you control recruitment. And if the people at the top are all, largely white men, or, it needs the decision makers and boards need to reflect their wider society and that's a diversity. And that's ultimately the only way things are going to change, because otherwise people keep on doing the same that they've done for the last 20, 30 years and not ever changes.
Yeah, excellent. Anything that usurps the current power, I'm usually in favour of, defund the police. So, Claire, are you there? Are you able to give us a quick summary?
If any of the group just want to kind of come in. So we talked about gender representation, especially in certain genres around music, and how difficult that is, and whether there's an education piece around that. We had a really good discussion, I think, around accessibility of venues and how much that potentially can cost, us something very practical around that. Is there something that the whole sector can do around accessibility of venues together? So there's some joint funding, there's some joint bids potentially they could put in to do that, so it's not just on one particular venue's hands, in terms of getting that money. We talked about funding and how funding works with the Arts Council, I guess with the City Council as well, around the elite, so around kind of opera and dance and classical, and how when not new genres, but how kind of other organisations kind of get a bigger piece of the pie rather than smaller pieces of the pie to do stuff, and how that all needs to change. Had a conversation around class and education, and kind of the fact that the arts are being cut from the education curriculum, and that's a huge threat, especially to working class kids and where they're going to come from in the future in terms of diversity of the arts sector. And we talked about collaborations being key to the overall picture. So the more that sectors collaborate, the more that they come together with one voice, the easier it is to be heard. And that is something that potentially can come out of this, is how that collaboration can grow and be hugely successful, and authority, and people in authority will listen to it more. Don't know if there's anything else anyone else wants to come in, if I've missed anything.
That's awesome. And finally, Yao, if you're there.
Yeah, Yao didn't have a breakout room.
Okay, cool. Okay, excellent. Thank you, everyone. So to give you a sense, a very quick summary of what's coming up next, what we're going to do is we're going to collate and act on all of the ideas that you guys have talked about. So my team are in the room with you, and we're going to come up with some SMART goals so that we can give you very clear next steps. And we're going to think about that at a city region level, a business level, or organisation level, then an individual level as well. We're going to keep you in the loop via email, so you know what the heck's going on, because you've all just given your time for this, so thank you. And the next Firestarters event is in August, and what you can do now is connect with other attendees from today's event. If anyone wants a specific introduction, please let us know. Aaron will facilitate it for you. It's part of the reason of us doing this. Let us know who you want to talk to. You can follow us on Twitter at Hey Firestarters, and you can get in touch with your own ideas for Firestarters. If something has come out of this conversation today and you're like, it would be really great if we could just have a really specific conversation about this thing, tell us, we will listen. We're here to listen. So that's about it, really. If you've got any questions, please feel free to get in touch with me or Aaron. Ultimately, it can be anyone from the Matchstick Creative team, but really we're the main point of contact. And apart from that, we will see you at our next event soon. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for your time. You're all excellent, as expected. Thank you, facilitators. Thank you, Yao.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.